Please don't stay in the building and discuss the case. Please exit the building. Don't go out in the lobby and try and discuss because the sound still comes back in. Roll call.
Dave Doherty.
Here.
Martha Casabon. Pug Lauren. Marcus Hines. Todd Richard. Bernie Willie. Bill Matthews. Jimmy Davis. Dave Manella. Kirk Drum. Ron Randolph. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you. We have a packet of minutes from the September 3rd meeting. It was in your packet. Hopefully you've had an opportunity to review those. Do I hear a motion to approve, or are there any changes that need to be made? Motion put to approve by Mr. Randolph, second by Mr. Lauren. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Staff, we have any cases to be postponed?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Number 1 on the agenda, ZC 01-03-028, and the representative would like to address the zoning commission.
Representative with what?
Would like to address the zoning commission.
Okay, let me, that's the only one that needs to be
Yes, sir.
postponed? Okay. All right. Gordon, come to the mic and,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and fellow commissioners. My name is McCord Carrico. I represent the ASBE Fund, who is one of the owners of property being developed at 1088 and I-12. Right now, we're busy working with the parish on their comments, I think which you already seen, and we need a little more time to finalize those comments to satisfy the parish's concerns. So we respectfully request that the matter be tabled.
okay. Any commissioners have any questions?
Yes, as I understand, at least one member of the public and a member of one of our institutions has asked for a community meeting. I think that would probably be a good thing. The subdivision board of the subdivision I live in is very interested in what's going on over here. They're confused and don't know, and I think that would be a very good idea to get the subdivisions along 1088 invited to a community meeting so that the general public can figure out what you guys are really planning, and it'd be a good opportunity to hear what the general public is interested in this piece of property. And I would volunteer to be on part of the commission to do that.
Yes, sir. I just learned of that request tonight, and I've advised my principal, and he says he has no objection to having such a meeting. And we'll cooperate in getting it set as soon as we can.
Helen?
The next date would be October 22nd, which is a Tuesday.
Will the plans for the parish, what y'all need them to do and what y'all working on now, would that be completed by then?
Maybe Mr. Carrico can answer that question.
What you're tabling this for, would those things be completed?
Well, we're very hopeful that they would be, and we think we're on the verge of having everything satisfied now.
Martha?
Should we wait?
There may be some items that come up from the public meeting that would need to be integrated into whatever, you know,
Well, I'm
they're
just saying to
working on.
have a comprehensive meeting on what, they're being asked to do,
Well, the next meeting is,
where-
what, November 12th? Is that when it is?
October 22nd,
the 22nd.
I mean, the next zoning commission meeting,
November
Yes.
12, I think.
12th.
12, yeah,
So we have a little extra time on the tail end.
on
Right.
that I was saying.
I didn't mean to interrupt,
No,
I'm
no,
sorry.
no, just that all the facts would be in on what you're doing.
Yes, ma'am.
In other words, and be more comprehensive before October.
Okay, so we need to set a public meeting, a community meeting for October the 22nd, Tuesday, 6 p.m., Helen?
Yes, sir.
6 p.m.
Here.
That'll be here in the chambers?
In the
Yes.
council chambers, yes.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
Do I hear a motion to postpone?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Matthews, seconded by Mr. Davis. Please vote. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you very
Chairman,
much.
The date is October the 22nd or 7th, which
22nd,
22nd.
yeah, Tuesday, 6 p.m. in the council chambers.
And who on the commission might like to
You
volunteer to be there?
volunteered. Did anyone else on the commission wish to volunteer to be present at this meeting? Okay, Mr. Drum, I will be there, so that's 3. Ron?
I think-
That's 4. I think that's all we can do.
3 or 4 is generally,
Yeah, okay. So we've got Bill. Kirk. Ron.
Mr. Drum, Doherty, Matthews, and who else did I understand there's another one?
Mr. Randolph.
Mr.
Mr. Randolph.
Randolph.
And
Okay.
Ron Randolph. Okay, all right. We had the motion and it is postponed until the next meeting.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item 2, zoning case 13-10-074. Existing zoning is A2 Suburban District. Proposed zoning is NC6 Public Culture and Recreational District. It's 6.7 acres. Petitioner is Jeffrey D. Shane. Owners Bert A. Dupree, Billy L. Dupree, and Bobby P. Dupree. Parcel located on the east side of Louisiana 1077 north of Laurent Road, south of Brewster Road, Ward 1, District 1. Staff?
The 2025 Future Land Use Plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses. Staff sees no compelling reason to support a request to rezone the site to commercial zoning in this location based on the designation of the 2025 plan and the fact that it is surrounded by residential zoning. Aside from Madisonville Elementary School, most of Highway 1077 corridor is developed with residential uses on large parcels of land. The nearest commercially zoned parcels are located over 1 mile away to the south and north of this parcel. Note that the site is proposed to be developed with a daycare, aftercare facility, and athletic training facility. If the commission sees fit to support a zoning change for this site, other less intensive zoning classifications should be considered, such as ED1, Primary Educational District, CB1, Community-Based Facilities District. Staff recommends the request for NC6 be denied.
Thank you. Mr. Shane?
Thank you, Mr. Doherty. Good evening. Jeff Shane of Jones Fussell Law Firm, and I represent Chris Jean, who is a businessman in Pearl River, who has a contract to purchase this property and hopes to develop it. We respectfully disagree with the staff recommendation and the, I guess, statements that are made in the report that has been read to you this evening. You are receiving now a site plan which is suggestive of how we hope to develop the property. And I say suggestive because it's conceptual, but we believe it to be accurate. My client currently owns a daycare and athletic training facility in Slidell. The daycare aftercare facility is known as Kids Club. It's off of Housey Beach Lane, east of I-10. I think it has approximately 10 to 15-year history at that location, and my client's had great success. He's not actually the operator, but he's obviously an owner and involved with it. He also, my client, Mr. Jean, is the owner of an athletic training facility that is located north of Browns Village Road. That has been very successful. You may remember a few months ago, maybe 6 or so, you zoned one of his warehouse buildings in that area to NC6 to allow for the operation of an athletic training facility. So looking at the site plan, I'd like to now explain to you Mr. Jean's vision. He hopes to purchase this approximate 6.8 acre parcel. And the first thing I'd like to do is to amend our request and delete the areas that are shaded yellow from the requested zoning change. As Mr. Jean has looked at the property more closely, we feel it's appropriate to leave a buffer, meaning an area that would remain the same zone, both on the north side. That's 120 feet deep off of the northern boundary. That's also a wetlands area, which will not be intruded. And also the rear area, which is 150 feet deep, which might end up being a good location for a home or two for those that might be operating these facilities, so that he could have operators that obviously live on site. So we're going, by virtue of making this amendment, one of the things we do is we decrease our request for NC6. We also leave, if you will, the A2 zoning in place on the north and east sides. This property is unique in the sense that although there is certainly some residential in the area, there's no residential development that's really right on top of this. There's a home across the street from 1077. There's a large Cleco plant located, as you can see, in the northwest corner. What's not shown on this map and what's not noted in the staff report is a very significant church campus that's located immediately south of this site and abuts it. Also, of course, across the street is Madisonville Elementary School. So the vision is simply to provide a daycare and aftercare facility for families, many of which are likely to be taking children to Madisonville Elementary School. That would provide them with the opportunity to drop preschool children, if you will, at the daycare after they drop their children at school in the morning. It will also provide a place for children that go to Madisonville Elementary to go in the afternoons after school until parents can pick them up. The athletic training facility, this is not anything that rivals a rec district. It's not a team sport facility. It's an individual training facility. It's one where parents might go and perhaps learn certain skills, but more importantly, or typically, you would find young people go, both male and female, often where they learn to hit a baseball, to shoot a basketball, those types of things. Most of it is conducted in the indoor facility, which you see in the blue area on the north side. It says baseball training. Some of it would be in the practice field area to the rear. Again, this would not be a baseball diamond to the rear. There are not baseball games. It's just an open area where you can build a couple of mounds where you can allow kids to run bases and things of that nature. Again, Mr. Jean has a facility similar to that on the east end of the parish. We feel that the NC6 zone is appropriate. Not only does it allow for these uses, but we think that also an NC zone is appropriate on a state highway. We can't disagree that the zones suggested by staff would in fact accommodate our use, but quite frankly, we are purchasing this property at a NC price, if you will, and also have to think a little bit about what happens if for some reason one or both of these uses are not as successful as we hope. And we feel that the NC zone is a very modest or moderate zone. It's not one that has extensive uses. One of the things that could come to some mind is that is there a possibility that if these facilities aren't built, are we going to have facilities that might be involved with the sale of alcoholic beverages, whether that be for consumption on site, whether it be retail, et cetera. And I think all of you are aware that we have state and parish laws that prohibit that when you are within proximity of the existing church and when you are in proximity of the existing school. So I don't think that any of those things, although that's certainly not part of the business plan that I presented to you, that's another reason that, again, we feel that the NC zone is a fair request, a reasonable request. We have already reached out to the St. Tammany Parish School Board to understand their infrastructure system as it relates to central sewage, water, gas, electricity. We also hope to work with the St. Tammany Parish School Board, and in particular Madisonville Elementary, to make good use of their traffic guard that they have posted at C.S. Owens Road, which is the road that is essentially the entranceway to Madisonville Elementary. It is across or on the west side of the site plan you're looking at. We envision, if you're familiar with you may not be familiar with the circular traffic pattern at the school, which involves one-way traffic to drop children off and allow those vehicles to come out to 1077. What we hope is that some families may want to use this daycare and aftercare facility. They'll drop their school-age children at school. They will, with the assistance of the traffic guard, cross 1077 and come down Laurent Road. You'll see that marked on the site plan on the south side. They will turn into the green area, which is where the daycare is, go in and drop, obviously, their younger age children, and then they can exit through the other drive to the north, which will be on 1077. You notice on the site plan that I've taken one access and X'd it out and marked no access. And that's because I met with AOA approximately 2 to 3 weeks ago, presented this plan to them. Ms. Slifer will speak this evening on their behalf, but we got a very warm and good reception from AOA. And the one request that they had of us was that rather than having 2 driveway connections on Highway 1077, that we have only one. We agreed to that request and have eliminated the southern drive. I think all of you are aware, but in order to get a permit for the northern drive, we are going to have to submit a traffic impact analysis study to the parish and also submit one to LADOTD to get a driveway permit to connect to this state highway. So that if for some reason there's further improvements that are needed as it relates to safely handling the traffic that's proposed for the daycare aftercare, we think that we obviously can do so. But there will be studies that will be presented during the permitting process to ensure that public safety is not compromised. Also, I think you would recognize that the traffic patterns to the daycare are primarily going to be at the peak hour in the morning when children are coming to school. And likewise, the pickup hours are going to be when children are getting out of school. The athletic training will be late afternoon, but also a lot of stuff on Saturday when there will be very little traffic in that area. And other than the school activity in this area, this is really a very quiet section of Highway 1077. I'm not suggesting there aren't vehicles that travel. Am I now getting into my rebuttal time? Thank you. That there aren't vehicles that travel that highway frequently, but don't picture this being a crunch area of 1077 as you might have in some other areas. Again, that's not to suggest that safety should be compromised. I think I've told you that I think there's processes in place that will ensure safety. So at the end of the day, we ask you to recommend to the council that this property be rezoned to NC6 to facilitate the development of this plan, which includes a daycare and aftercare, also an athletic training facility with one drive onto Highway 1077, which will be permitted after presentation of an appropriate traffic impact analysis study. I thank you for your time. If any of you have any questions, I'll be glad to address them at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? You're going to speak for?
I'll be very brief.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Doherty, Commissioners. I'm Sandra Slifer, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Association of Associations, that Jeff did come and present the plan to us, that overall we thought that there was some synergy between the daycare center and the school that is in the area, that, as he stated, we didn't want two driveways on 1077, his client has agreed to the one curb cut, and the AOA is in favor of this development. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak, either for or against? I'll close the floor to the public and bring it back to the commissioners. So, Mr. Lauren.
I'd like to get the the commissioners, if you will, look at your packet, to the second to last page that has to deal with this one. See the page I'm talking about? Okay. Let me give you a little background about the only concern that I really have, and I mentioned it to Marty Dean earlier today. You see the area that's the biggest part of that ED1? That's the original campus of Madisonville Elementary School. They outgrew the facility, and they had to get some temporary classrooms put in, which some of them have been converted. But the area that's across the street from it, across that Owens Road, the campus is split right down the middle with the street going through the middle of an elementary school. You follow what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Okay. When that happened, the school came back to the parish and they requested that Owens Road be blockaded during the day so that children would not be subjected to traffic flowing up and down the street. So for most of the day, just about where the S is on that S. Owens Road, there's a swinging gate that closes off and locks. When the parents are dropping their children off at school, well, one other background thing, Madisonville Elementary School has been designated as one of the primary schools in the parish for children that have handicaps. So they have a large percentage of children at that school that have handicaps of one sort or the other. So there's a higher than normal percentage of parents dropping their kids off at school that can't ride the school bus. Okay? If they're being dropped off, if they come down Highway 1077, I passed by there the other afternoon coming home from Franco's, and on the west side of 1077, from about where you see Keys Road, up in that area, there were cars parked on the shoulder of the road, on the west side of the road, all the way down to Galatas. And then they were parked on the shoulder of the road down Galatas, and then down that connector street, and then they came in there and they were lined up waiting to pick up their children. People coming from the south, from down about where the Lane Road is, were parked on the east side, waiting for that traffic cop to let them turn to the left to get in there. I don't know if I'm making sense, but what I'm saying is, in addition to all of that, right in front of the school, about where that long narrow part goes out and connects out to Highway 1077, there's a driveway that's solely used for the school buses that go in and out, pick up the kids and bring them out. So at that intersection, there's one traffic cop that's up there in the morning and in the evenings trying to direct that traffic. Now, I know we have to get a traffic study, and I understand that that comes during the permitting. But what I'm saying is, that is, it's a nightmare to try to drive through there. And 1077 is one of two north-south roads that lets people that live in Madisonville area get up to the interstate. You either go 1077 or you go Highway 21. It is a compressed time period during the day that this happens. It's when school starts and when school lets out. And if you add more children to the mix, you know, it needs to be addressed. It needs to really have a good look at. I'm not concerned about the zoning. That's not the issue. I don't believe it's realistic to believe that somebody's going to come in there in the area that's shaded green and put in a house that's bordered on the north by a Clico substation and on the south by a church and across the street by a school, That's not the concern. My concern is a good plan for a traffic flow that's comprehensive to take that into account. Lawrence Road, Jeff, as I understand it, it's not even blacktop now. It's just like a driveway. Yep.
It is, but the plan is to have it hard surfaced,
Okay.
at
Well,
least up to the driveways that would be utilized by this facility.
Well, understand what I'm saying. I'm not opposed to it.
Yes, sir.
All I'm saying is that when you come back at the planning stage, there needs to be some conversation with the school board about how to coordinate the traffic. Because it's a mess now before you put this in. And if you build this right across the street from the school, it's not gonna lessen it,
Right.
okay?
Well, if I could make a
Certainly.
few comments to that to maybe help the discussion? Those obviously good points, which I understand and respect and which we have been thinking about. Firstly, this daycare will probably have at max no more than 50 children. Those children will be dropped between the hours of 6 in the morning and probably as late as 8:30 or 9 in the morning. So you have, in my view, relatively minimal traffic. Some of those children, there's not one per car, but there may be two coming in a car, and they're dispersed over a period of time. Some are also going to be coming again in the cars that are dropping kids at Madisonville Elementary. So I agree with you that the traffic coordination is important for safety reasons, but I think we would all agree that all of our lower grade schools, public, parochial, and private, experience a vehicle crunch at the start of school and the pickup of school, because most of us as parents and grandparents are very concerned about young ones. Beginning of the year, they don't want to put them on the bus. Many by the end of the year are riding the bus. But the point is, you're right, there's a lot of cars that are coming to and from those hours. Now, this case will not be coming back to you in planning, so I don't want to misrepresent that this is not going to be a subdivision. It could, in fact, maybe be divided into two parcels, but if so, it would be by minor subdivision. But I did suggest or would state that it's my belief, and staff correct me if they disagree, but I know to get the driveway permit onto 1077, that's issued by LADOTD, and I know that a TIA is a prerequisite. And I believe that because of the acreage involved here, our building permit process at the parish level will likewise require the submission of a TIA for Ms. Lawler to review in engineering. So we understand that if, in fact, this plan has to be tweaked, are there things that need to be done? We understand that's a part of the way of doing business and doing business in the right way. So we're prepared to do that. Just as I've already mentioned, we've already given thought to the hard surfacing of Laurent. We intend to speak to the councilman about that possibility. If not, we may have to look into doing it ourselves. It would be of benefit to the church as well, I might add, to encourage those going to the church campus to get off of 1077 at Laurent and then, of course, turn right into the church campus that's to the south. I hope that helps, Mr. Loren.
Mr. Willie?
Jeff, I've got a couple questions. Yes. You mentioned there will be no baseball games per se or teams playing each other, but you didn't mention anything about hours of operation as far as the baseball training and also the lighting. It will be any night training where you have the normal baseball field lights associated with baseball fields?
No, I don't think, I've asked that question, and I don't think there'll be any lights, at least not initially, but if there are lights, we're aware of the fact that there are lighting regulations that will now allow us to put up Everglow lights that would light the sky. Okay. As a practical matter, there are no residences to the north, east, or south, but irrespective of that, to answer your question, we're cognizant of that and don't intend to light up this facility. This is not what I would call a team or large group facility at one time. It's really more for individual training. Maybe some of you have children or grandchildren that have gone to athletic training facilities similar to this.
So what's the hours of operation or 10 to?
Well, I haven't asked But if I remember the discussions with Mr. Chuck Walker, who is the operator of the facility in Slidell, I'm not even sure that they're open in the morning during the school year for obvious reasons, because I think the children are in school. My guess is it's a mid-afternoon till 6, 7, something like that, because kids have to go home and eat, do homework, things of that nature. I would imagine Saturday it's different. I would think it might be from 8 in the morning till mid or late afternoon.
Mr. Davis?
Yes, Jeff. While I appreciate this will not probably be coming back out to us for planning, but in this case, we have to actually think about a little bit of planning here because you've given us this information. The planning department has suggested that you take the actual area in which you're going to build this daycare and playground and make that ED1 and have the baseball practice field as CB1. Well, I don't have a problem with that, and I don't understand why you're requesting NC6, which if you include NC1 all the way through NC6, it's 48 different permitted uses. So would you be?
Sure.
So from a pure zoning point of view, I think the ED1 would be better, plus you have ED1 right across the street, and the CB1 for your practice area would suffice.
Right. Well, I don't disagree that the use could be made in those zones, but hopefully you would agree those are very restricted zones, meaning that if those, and I recognize that may be a double-edged sword in our discussion, but the point is that it is really, in many respects, almost like granting a conditional use permit for these proposed activities, because that's about the only thing that you can do. I don't mean literally. I realize that if we pull out ED1 and CB, we're going to see there's some other uses, but based on the size of the land, it would limit the uses. And Mr. Jean is a businessman. In order to make this investment, put in the infrastructure, do the things that he needs to do, you always have to think about the possibilities if these concepts are not as successful as you would hope they would be. So if so, there could be a possibility of another use at that location. I think the uses are going to be limited even in the neighborhood commercial categories, and from a practical matter, as to what you would put in that area. But I would suggest to you right now that I think professional offices and things of that nature located on this property would not be inappropriate and would not be in conflict with anything going on at the school or with traffic in that area. Again, we've already talked about the alcohol issue, which I think is going to knock out a lot of those uses. Those of you that are familiar with 1077 and where the commercial centers are, this is not a good site for a strip center or things of that nature. You don't need a commercial at that location. But to answer your question, to make the investment both of acquisition of land and installation of infrastructure, Mr. Jean wants to have the flexibility to know that he has a neighborhood commercial zone.
Mr. Matthews?
Well, Jeff, I understand that, like most businessmen, you want the biggest bang for the buck. However, what he is proposing for this site is a daycare center and a baseball training facility. If that's what he's planning to do, then we can get there without the myriad of things in CB 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. CB 2 has a bunch of things, delicatessen, drugstores, such as that, that probably would be stuff we would not want to have across from the school. But if we give you the NC, then by right you can put those. My feeling is if the daycare center doesn't work out, and I can't imagine, I don't think there's been really many daycare centers in this parish that haven't worked out because we need a lot of them. But in any event, if it doesn't work out and you want to put a drugstore there, then come back and ask for the NC too. And if that's appropriate, that's what we'd do. But to give you all of NC, which is what NC6 does, it is just opening the door to, come put anything you want there. And to me, that's too inclusive when we can do the ED1 and the CB1 and get you and Mr. Jean where he wants to go without opening the door for virtually anything Mr. Jean would like to do in the future.
Okay. May I respond to that, or? No?
Yes, sir.
I mean, well, again, I certainly respect the viewpoint, and I don't think that it's inaccurate. I think it's just a matter of perspective. But I think one thing that is a significant difference of perception is that you say just come back and ask for the zone you need. Well, at that point in time, my client's made the investment, and he's obviously experienced failure of some sort. And if he doesn't get the zoning change, what does he then do with a piece of property zoned ED1 and CB? He's already tried to make an ED1 use and a CB1 use. And the hypothet that we're discussing assumes that they've not been successful. So again, the economics of the project at least suggests to us that if this were a request for highway commercial, I would fully understand the grave concerns that the commission might have about a highway commercial use at this location. When I look at the fact that you have the Clico site already anchored there, which in my view is an industrial use, when I look at the fact that Mr. Jean has already offered this evening or has amended his petition and created or preserved, is a better choice of words, preserved the existing A2 on the north and east side, I feel like that if you look at that sector of 1077, it's really impractical to think that there's going to be a drugstore there or some of the other uses that you might refer to. I personally think that other than maybe a cluster of professional offices, I'm not real sure that any of the others would fit there. When I look at the commercial we have to the north at 1077 and I-12 and the things that we have further south. But certainly, we both, I think, understand each other.
Well, the fact that he would have a failure here, I think that double-edged sword, it would come back, when he comes back to us and pleads the fact that he had the daycare center and it didn't work, that would be an argument in his favor to get a different zoning. So while, yes, I know he'd like to have it as insurance just in case, but if it doesn't work, I think he would come back and plead to us, look, I tried a daycare, it didn't work. I tried the ED1, it didn't work, so now I need the NC1 or NC2 or whatever it is, and I think at that point we would be much more conducive to granting it.
Mr. Hines?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to make a comment on it. I'm not, and I have really no problems with it. But as far as traffic is concerned around schools, I do substitute bus driving, and I'm here to tell you, there ain't a school in the parish that doesn't have traffic problems. And I mean, you can go any school you want to, and I'm here to tell you, they're stacked up miles one way or the other. And some of them are a nightmare for us bus drivers to try to get in and out of. But that's neither here nor there. People want to take their children to school, and they're going to do that. And you just got to live with it. Sometimes I have to take a school bus and drive down the left-hand side of the road to get around traffic, to get to the school. I've done it in a lot of schools. And, but as far as traffic is concerned, if it's anywhere near a school, there's going to be traffic. I'm here to tell you. Thank you.
Mr. Lloyd?
Well, one other piece of information, just for the equation. Madisonville Elementary is one of the fastest growing schools in the parish. It's grown from I live not far from there, and it's grown from 250, 300 students, Martha. You know more about the numbers than I do. It grew to almost 850, and they built a new school to alleviate some of that. So there's a lot of residential development bringing in young families. There's need for daycare. There's need for it. And the nearest daycare center is over on Highway 21 and further south. So, the ED, if it were a request just for the daycare center, I don't have a problem with that, as long as we work out, there's a plan in place for the traffic. you know, I guarantee you, if you were driving a school bus on that road, you'd drive down the left-hand side of the road. I do it in the morning and the afternoons to get through. Okay?
You gotta do it.
You gotta do it.
Mr. Richard?
Mr. Chair, I'm equally concerned about the traffic, but I think this is also an appropriate zoning request, and I move that we accept.
We have a motion to approve the NC6 by Mr. Richard. Do I have a
I second it.
Second by Mr. Hines. Ms. Casabon, you had your light on.
I just had a comment that it is, it's something that is needed, the daycare, equally as much traffic as there is. These parents are trying to get to work, and a lot of times they have nowhere to get, you know, to place their children. And a lot of this, the traffic and the schools are really at capacity even for aftercare and before care. I think it's an appropriate place for this particular facility, and that there is a need for it. I feel like that this request, it is heavy, but because of the church, and that's what we always worry about, is what could go there, the alcohol. But with the church and the school, we know there's a lot of things that would be eliminated. I concur that I think it'll be an appropriate place for this and
Okay.
zoning.
Thank you. Mr. Matthews?
Just to comment that I don't have a real problem with the daycare center or the practice field. My problem is with the NC zoning. Both of these facilities can be accomplished easily and correctly with a lesser intense zoning, ED1 and CB1. And that's, I think, where we ought to try to go, rather than allow the open checkbook for all of the other items in NC. It just, we're going to allow the possibility of a great many more things of right. They're not going to come back to us in the NC, and that scares me.
Mr. Davis?
My comment to Commissioner Matthews is ditto.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Casabon, do you have anything?
It's just that, again, the size, if it would be more than this, with the parking, with everything that's there, that really eliminates a lot of things that can go in that particular zoning. The commercial, you know, I think is needed to be able to utilize this property to the best.
Okay,
Mr.
And
Chairman?
it is a highway.
we have a motion and a second
Mr. Chairman,
on the floor. Yes,
I think that if there's a motion to recommend approval, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Shane requested to reduce the acreage. And we don't have the final numbers yet?
No, but I would ask that this site plan be put into the record, and if a recommendation is made, we will provide legal description
Okay.
that would delete the yellow areas on the north and east.
So if there's a motion to recommend approval,
That is correct. I'm going to amend my motion to include the plat as defined. That was my intent. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll amend my second.
okay, thank you. All right, Dave?
I just want to confirm what Mr. Shane had said, that due to its proximity to the school and to the church, that if the commission were to pass this, that alcohol would be prohibited because of its proximity for any establishments that might be placed on the property?
It's 500 feet from the parish. The state's actually 300 feet, but our parish goes farther and says within 500 feet of the property line. Isn't that correct? Property line. So that would be, alcohol would be prohibited. So you're looking at probably knocking out a restaurant and things like that, so.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor that is amending the original request to that shown on the plat here, deleting the yellow area, and Mr. Shane is going to get the legal description to staff within the next week or so?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Please vote. We We have 8 yeas, 2 nays, no abstentions. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 3, zoning case 04-11-093, major amendment to PUD, Plan Unit Development Overlay. It's 117 acres. The petitioner Jeffrey D. Shane, owners Tuscany Estates LLC, parcel located on the east side of Louisiana 1077, north of Louisiana 1085, across from Stagna Road, Ward 1, District 3. Staff?
The request consists of a reduction of the front yard setback from 30 feet to 20 feet on a lot listed on your staff report, and staff would like to recommend approval.
Thank you. Mr. Shane?
Thank you. My name's Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm in Covington. I represent Tuscany Estates LLC, which is both the owner and developer of the undeveloped remaining lots in Tuscany West. And I emphasize undeveloped because this is, in my view, a very simple request to amend the PUD to change the front setback from 30 to 20 feet on those lots that have not been developed that have a 30-foot setback. Many of the lots in the subdivision already have a 20-foot setback. So we believe that this is going to create more uniformity. It's actually going to provide the opportunity for a larger footprint, which would connote, in some cases, a larger home and more value. And we believe that this will be, at best, a neutral change, but perhaps, and hopefully, a positive change. I think a very logical question is, why do we come to you to ask for this? It's because the people, the builders, the general contractors that want to build in this subdivision would like to enjoy the same 20-foot front setback that many of the other lots have that already have homes on it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shane.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else in the audience wish to speak on this? I'll close the floor to the public. Ms. Casabon?
Yes, if staff, I see, has no problem with this and it's consistent with the houses that are already in there, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Casabon to approve, seconded by Mr. Davis. Mr. Matthews?
Jeff, I just have one question of clarification. We're dealing only with the shaded lots on this map?
Yes, sir.
Why are we not dealing with the other lots in this little area?
Many of them either already have 20-foot setbacks or they already have homes on them, which we don't own and can't change.
Okay, so
We took the lots.
the lots that are not shaded have homes already on them?
Not all of them.
Most of them, many of them?
No, I would,
No, some of them?
15 to 20 homes, correct. I think there's about 22 homes, but many of them already have 20-foot setbacks.
Okay, all right,
There was no need to change it, no
Okay.
reason nor need to change them.
okay.
Any further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And any old business needs to be brought up? Any new business? Motion to adjourn. We had a motion and a second there. All right.